You're listening to episode 1 of the Life as an Optimist podcast, and I'm your host, Melissa Alexandria. I am so excited to be creating this workshop-style podcast and having this amazing platform to connect with you and to share all about positivity, creating your best life, and achieving your biggest goals. For me, this podcast is an extension of the loving community of my YouTube subscribers and Instagram followers, and it's all about inclusion, acceptance, love, and understanding, and definitely about choosing to live on the bright side of life. A little bit about me. As I said, my name is Melissa. I'm a Canadian-Italian living in and loving Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a healthy vegan lifestyle YouTuber with a big passion for personal development. I've always been fascinated with human potential and what we're capable of creating and achieving when we truly believe in ourselves and love ourselves. I'm an idealist through and through. I know that we're capable of so much more as individuals and as a society, and I often wonder what things would be like if we didn't judge and criticize ourselves and each other so much. If we truly felt free to be ourselves, to believe in ourselves, if there was less jealousy and more encouragement, if there was less loneliness and more togetherness, and less name-calling and more congratulating, if there was less insecurity and shame and guilt and blame and more self-love. And that's why this first episode of the podcast is dedicated 100% to self-love. We are going to delve deep into all aspects of self-love and chat a bit about some steps that can be taken to deepen our love for ourselves. I'm going to be sharing with you daily habits you can develop in order to learn to love yourself more, and also answering some of your great questions that I received about self-love on Instagram. And if you do have a question for me that you would like me to answer on this podcast, you can feel free to send me a question at MelissaAlexandria01 on Instagram, or you can comment on one of my videos on YouTube, which is youtube.com/MelissaAlexandria01, or send me an email at melissa@melissaalexandria.com. Okay, so let's start by asking, what is self-love? Ask yourself now, what does self-love mean to me? When I hear the word self-love spoken, personally, I sometimes feel that the definition is very vague. I picture someone smiling and dancing in the sunshine without a care in the world. And while that mental picture is beautiful, it sometimes seems so far removed from what we experience on a daily basis. And the real question is, how do you love yourself when you don't love what you're going through right now? How do you love yourself when you're sad, lonely, unsure, afraid, angry, etc.? I think a good place to begin defining what we mean by true self-love is to look at the qualities of self-love. And I've identified some of them here that I want to share with you. One is making your own physical, mental, and emotional well-being a priority. Being able to easily forgive yourself. Not being afraid to set big goals because you're believing in yourself and your worth. Liking your own company. This is a big one. Enjoying being with you. Do you enjoy being you? Being in your body, being who you are. Loving and appreciating your physical body and appearance. Making decisions that are in your best interest. Setting healthy boundaries in your relationships. Treating yourself well by caring for your physical body and your own emotional well-being. Getting enough sleep, exercising, eating well. And sometimes to get a clearer picture of something, it helps to talk about what it's not. So what is the opposite of self-love? Self-hate. Feeling ugly, worthless, ashamed, in fear, unlovable. Sabotaging your own happiness and success. Being overly self-critical, making fun of yourself. Choosing to remain in a relationship with someone or several people who berate and belittle you. Neglecting yourself, your friendships, your job, your home, etc. Abusing alcohol or other substances, and eating unhealthy foods in excess. Thinking and dwelling on negative thoughts about who you are, and so on. And maybe you feel that you sit somewhere in the middle, that in some ways you are very loving toward yourself, and in others you aren't. I think an important question to ask is, why does it even matter? What is the point of getting to a place where you love yourself more? Maybe you've been living for years just as you are, maybe not particularly loving to yourself, but what does that matter if I love myself or not? Does it matter? Yes, it does. How you feel about yourself determines the quality of the overall experience of your life. It affects every single area of your life. And it's also an example to other people around you. When you love yourself, when you're living in your truth, so to speak, and showing your self-respect and self-care, you show other people an example of how to love themselves. And how you feel about yourself affects everything from your relationships, your finances, your work life, your friendships, your physical body, absolutely everything. So, to invite more love into yourself and to want to develop a more beautiful and loving relationship between you and yourself has the power to completely transform your world and bring more joy into every aspect of your life and the lives of people around you. And so, the question is, if self love is natural, why does it have to be so hard? Why does it take so much work? Because to be honest, even for myself, it does feel like work at times. When you're not feeling particularly sparkly, when you're not feeling motivated and happy and inspired, and you're actually feeling at the complete other end of the spectrum, it feels like really hard work just to get to a place where you even like yourself. So, why is that? Why does it have to be hard? Well, the short answer is that in our society, we're taught in subtle and in some not so subtle ways from a very young age not to love ourselves. I believe that it's healthy and it's our natural state to love ourselves. If you look at babies, babies don't criticize their own bodies, nor do they experience crippling doubt, insecurity, shame, jealousy, guilt. Self-hate is learned. It is taught through our media, through our interactions with family members and our peers, and it's primarily learned by observation. We watch how other people talk about themselves and learn to do the same thing about ourselves. We watch our mothers, our sisters, friends, teachers, and neighbors look in the mirror and call themselves ugly or stupid or foolish. And we just think that that's just how it is. That's how we're supposed to feel about ourselves. And in a subtle way, we almost learn that the opposite is somehow wrong. To look in the mirror and feel beautiful and to proclaim our beauty and our magnificence is somehow wrong. The work of self-love is really in learning how to unlearn what's been ingrained in us for so long. And it might feel uncomfortable to look at yourself in the mirror and to start to think and say genuine, loving thoughts about yourself. But that's not because it's not natural to do so. It's because so very few people do it. And many of us have developed the habit of doing the opposite. And just a quick word to anyone listening right now who feels like, I've never really loved myself and I don't even think it's possible for me. I want to tell you that it is. No matter how you feel now, it is possible to get to a place where you genuinely love yourself and enjoy living life being you. Not that you won't have challenges, obstacles, and negative thoughts or emotions, but that you can love yourself despite them. I really want you to hear that. Through any of the real challenges that I've had in my life, particularly those that impacted my self-esteem, the one thing that really got me through was the deep down belief that it was possible to feel good again and to truly love myself. Even when I was experiencing really intense anxiety and was at the complete other end of feeling confident, I knew that the version of me that expressed love toward myself and that radiated inner peace, love, and joy and genuinely enjoyed her life, I knew that that me existed underneath whatever experience I was going through. And that's what I want you to know. If you're going through a dip in self-confidence right now, that confident you is the real you and is always there. It just takes a bit of work to get to a place of experiencing it. Okay, so how do you go about actually improving your relationship with you? First, go easy on yourself. Anytime you start something new and you start to do something differently than you've been doing it for years, it feels uncomfortable and even wrong. For example, if I told you to brush your teeth or to hold your fork with the opposite hand than you usually use, it would feel really bizarre at first because it's not what you're used to. You know that it's not wrong, it's just different and it feels different. The same goes for starting to act more loving toward yourself, especially if it's not what you normally do. Well, I've got some mini self love hacks that you can start to do today that, when repeated long enough, will start to positively impact the way you feel about yourself and create a sense of inner peace and self love within you. The trick is in actually doing these things. Yes, they sound beautiful and they sound like they would work, but they actually only work when you do them and when you make a habit of doing them. So that part is really up to you. So one is to create a daily forgiveness log. Forgiveness is so healing. Part of the reason many of us subconsciously keep ourselves in a place of self-hate, insecurity, or self-sabotage is because we feel guilty or shameful about something. Because of this guilt, we feel undeserving of true self-love. Like, who am I to be this happy, smiling, successful woman? Especially with everything that I've done wrong in my life. Do you have any idea of how many times a day you mentally put yourself down? Or how many times you get angry at yourself for doing the wrong thing or not doing something that you should have done? All of these little negative thoughts and feelings can accumulate into a larger sense of frustration and guilt. You've heard that forgiveness heals. Well, I think that forgiveness needs to be a daily healing act. Think of daily forgiveness as wiping the emotional slate clean and clearing any negative feelings you've had from that day. If you already write in your journal before bed, then I suggest keeping a separate section for a forgiveness log, or at the end of your daily writing, just on the last few lines, list anything from that day that you might be feeling guilty about, that you just feel needs your attention and needs you to just forgive it. You can also do the same for others. You can mentally forgive the person in traffic who cut you off. You can mentally forgive the rude salesperson at the store. You can forgive your friend for canceling your plans last minute. Forgiveness keeps your heart light. It prevents bitter feelings and resentment. Choose to prioritize forgiveness as it is a key in self-love. All right, 2, making a habit of practicing self-care. Show your physical body some love. Your body has been with you through a lot, so take some time for a relaxing bath, get a massage, take an extra 15 minutes to pamper yourself, whether that means spending time on beautifying yourself, doing your hair, makeup, putting together a beautiful outfit to wear. This is not about vanity at all. It's about taking the time and showing yourself that you are worth the effort of that extra time and care and love. A great way to get into the habit of self-care is to set aside a time of day, maybe 15 minutes before bed, where you spend on a different aspect of self-care each night. You can try a week of self-care, and maybe on day 1, you give yourself a manicure. Day 2, you spend 15 minutes dry brushing your body. On day 3, you can do a full body stretching routine with relaxing music on, etc. And just dedicate that time to loving yourself, loving your body, mind, and soul. This has always been a joy of mine. I love to put on music, getting all comfy into my robe and doing dry brushing, giving myself a facial massage with castor oil and maybe a few drops of lavender essential oil. I love having baths and even playing around with different makeup looks. I've always said that I tend to actually enjoy getting ready to go out more than the actual going out, if that makes sense. Just because it's this quiet time to myself where I can kind of play dress up, and I don't know, I've always just really enjoyed it. To me, it just seems like a special time. So 3 is to talk lovingly to yourself in the mirror. You might feel weird about this or uncomfortable, but it works. The record button on your mind is permanently on. Your subconscious mind is taking everything in. Every thought you have about yourself, your beliefs about your value, your worth, your capabilities. Loving self-talk is so important because it rewires your brain for self-love. Louise Hay has a couple of great self-love positive affirmations that you can listen to while looking in the mirror and smiling. And there are a couple of different ways to speak affirmations that I'm going to share with you. You can say them to yourself, like, I deeply and completely love and respect myself. Or you can say them out loud about yourself. You deeply and completely love and respect yourself. You might find that you'd like to say both, whatever feels best to say and to hear. A little side note about starting with positive self-talk. If you are in a place where you are really not at all feeling kind and loving toward yourself, and saying, I love myself, just feels totally fake and ridiculous and not true at all, and maybe it actually just doesn't even feel good to say, your mind might be saying, no, you don't love yourself. This is ridiculous. What are you doing? Then I recommend finding even just one thing that you actually do genuinely like about yourself. There is always something that you can find, even if it's something like, I'm a generous person, or I choose to eat healthy foods, or I'm great at my job and I give it my all. You can say that over and over again just to get comfortable with speaking about yourself and saying something that is positive. It could even be something like, I have beautiful hair, I love my hair. The point is to get yourself comfortable with speaking kindly to yourself. And repetition makes things feel more acceptable. And then once you've said that in your mind and out loud for a few days, try introducing another statement until you really get the hang of complimenting yourself and thinking about yourself in this way, focusing on your good qualities. I really recommend speaking kindly to yourself often and repeating loving and kind things to yourself all day long until you believe them with every ounce of your being. As the great Ralph Waldo Emerson says, you become what you think about all day long. This also ties in with setting aside time for me time and prioritizing it. This is so important. Whether you are into meditating or not, your me time should consist of whatever makes your soul happy. Spending time alone is precious and valuable. My me time is almost always walking in nature and listening to audiobooks. Doing that, especially at the same time, literally nourishes my soul and enriches my day. The more you have on your plate, the more likely you'll be to push this to the back burner, but I really do believe it needs to be prioritized. Often people will wait until they're completely stressed out, emotionally drained, and worn down until they realize they need to focus on their own personal well-being and take some time out. I also think there's a stigma about prioritizing yourself, particularly with women, where it's this underlying feeling of being selfish for focusing on your own needs and what feels good to you. Like that shouldn't really matter. I actually think the more you give to yourself of yourself, the more energy you have to give to others. When you're in a state where you're feeling emotionally nourished, so to speak, you're a great example to others as well. Okay, so now I'm going to answer some of your questions from Instagram. So if you'd like to send me a question for me to answer on an upcoming episode, again, my Instagram handle is at MelissaAlexandria01. All right, so the question here is, I struggle with finding the balance between my quality me time and working full force. Sometimes I don't feel like I deserve time off, and then at other times I'm stuck in a rut, procrastinating more than I should be, which causes a lot of stress because in the end I do have to finish my work. I know I deserve breaks, but it still feels wrong. Great question. Well, when it comes to productivity, I recommend switching your focus from time spent on work to task completion. Instead of saying, I need to work on this project for 2 hours, which means if you only end up focusing on work for 1 hour, you feel like you slacked off or were lazy or couldn't hit the goal of 2 hours of working straight. So break down your project into little tasks and say, instead, I'm going to sit down and edit these 5 pages of my book, and that is my task right now. So once you've done that, you can tick that off of your list and then reward yourself. Go take a walk outside, read a book for a little bit, or call a friend, and then get back to work on the next task. That's my suggestion. It focuses more on the actual tasks that you're wanting yourself to get completed in a day rather than feeling like you need to be busy working for hours on end. I do that with cleaning. I used to say that I'm going to spend 2 hours cleaning this whole house today. And now instead, I'll say, okay, right now I'm going to complete the task of cleaning the bathtub. It's much more specific. It might only take 10 minutes, but I got the task done. And then when I have more time later, I'll pick another specific task to put my attention on and effort on and just get it done. So to answer the other part of your question where you said it feels wrong to take time for yourself, be okay with the fact that it feels wrong. It just feels wrong because you're used to feeling guilty for prioritizing your enjoyment or relaxation. Get yourself feeling used to it by making it a habit. If you never take the time to have a relaxing bubble bath with music and candles and essential oils and a face mask, etc., and that's something that you like, then do it. Even though you might be thinking, all of this fuss just for me, all of this fancy stuff just for me to have a bath, yes, you're worth it. You are worth the time. You deserve the pleasure of it. And if you can make the time, I highly recommend getting used to it and treating yourself to moments like these. It will refresh you and have you feeling even more energized when you do get back to doing your work. Okay, next question. How do you learn to trust your own instincts about what's right for you? I feel like I struggle with listening to my gut and doing what's right for me, especially when my loved ones give me competing advice. Any tips for finding or following your own path? Great question. And again, this comes back to the idea of things not feeling normal because you're not used to it. If you've gotten more in the habit of trusting what other people say is right for you, over time, listening to your own intuition and own true feelings about something might feel wrong. That intuition and inner voice is always there, and it will begin to strengthen again when you listen to it more and more. But you have to be willing to go through that potentially awkward and uncomfortable phase of starting to listen to your own inner advice, even though it feels a bit weird and even though it might be contradictory to what other people are telling you. This is not to say that you shouldn't ever take into account what your loved ones have to say, but it should never override what you feel to be right deep down within you. I find that the bigger issue tends to be a worry about being judged by others, judged for our decisions, especially family and those who are closest to us. It's normal to want their approval and want them to agree with our life choices. I would say follow your instinct and trust that the people who truly love you will love you no matter what. Also, you always have a choice in life. Take a risk, make a choice. If you change your mind, you can always make another choice. I recently moved from Vancouver, Canada to Phoenix, Arizona, and that is a big life change. Some people said, what if you don't like the extreme hot summers, etc.? And Alex and I were both on the same page. We both just felt like if we don't like it, there are other places. We aren't going to let the negative what ifs outweigh all of the positive what ifs and our own feelings of wanting to move to Arizona. And so we did it. All right, next question. I deal with the occasional battle of comparison, and it can be haunting at times. If I'm scrolling through Instagram and see someone with an incredibly fit body and super tan in a tropical area, I'll start to question myself. And this question comes from Kami Devlin. She is a fellow YouTuber and a friend of mine. So great question, Kami. I think thoughts and feelings like that can actually bring us together because so many of us feel this way at times. I think it's very brave and honest and open of women to share their thoughts like this because so many of us can relate, and there's a beautiful connection and strengthening to be had when we open up the conversation in such a vulnerable and raw way. These quote unquote perfect Instagram photos can inspire in 1 minute, and then they can also create a sense of inadequacy and inner shame in the next. So I think what's really important to hear and to know is how incredibly beautiful and magnificent we all are in our own way. And it's hard to remember and focus on that when you're looking at glistening six-pack abs on the beach in Thailand and you feel so far removed from what you're looking at. But it really doesn't take away anything from the beauty of who you are. So I just want you to hear that. Sometimes I think about that when I look in nature. I share with you guys on my Instagram and on my YouTube channel of how nature inspires me all the time. And one thought that I have often when I'm walking in nature is every time I look at something that's magnificently beautiful, like a gorgeous tree, a beautiful sunset, a beautiful mountain range, beautiful, birds, I think about how they're not competing. They're equally beautiful. They all have their own unique beauty. And I don't think that a rose is feeling, that it's inadequate because of the beauty of the sunset. They can all exist together, and they all add something so beautiful to the picture, to the scene, to nature. And so I think about us that way as humans. We all add something so beautiful, and we are all so beautiful in our own way. And so maybe just keep that in your mind next time you're scrolling through Instagram. All right, I have some book recommendations for you today. When it comes to wanting to be kinder and more gentle and loving toward yourself, I really, really, really recommend Sherry Huber's books. The three that are currently my personal favorites and that I've read most often are The Key, When You're Falling, Dive, and number one for me is There's Nothing Wrong with You. I absolutely love that book. If anyone is feeling inadequate in any way, insecure, like you've had a hit to your self esteem, please read There's Nothing Wrong with You by Sherry Huber. Sherry has a way of saying something so simply and concisely that is so powerful and at the same time really goes straight to the heart. And so I definitely recommend checking out her books. They're a little bit hard to find online. I know she has them all on her website. And not all of them are in audiobook format, at least not that I've found yet. But if you can get your hands on one, I highly recommend reading her books. Also, I recommend the classic You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. If you've read it, why not pick it up again and read it again? Or sometimes what I like to do with that book is just flip to a page and read that page and take that as my message for that moment, that day. All right, guys, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I just want to send you so much love and positivity right now, and just a big virtual hug from me to you. And if you have a question for me, send it on in. I would love to answer it here on Life as an Optimist. And have a beautiful day. I love you for listening.